And good morning, everyone. Welcome to Caff-AI Chats. Oh, hold on, I'm not sure what happened there. Still hear the music? Let me see. Hold on. We got a little bit of okay. Oh, there we go. Sorry. That's what my problem is. Great. That it's great technology this morning, or that's user error with technology. I try to. So well, let's kick this off first. So good morning, everyone. Welcome to Caff-AI Chats. I am, of course, Denise Mirtha Bachmann. We do these on Wednesdays, but I have a very special guest today. I'll let him do his own introduction, but I'll just say welcome, Tom Allen, who is the founder of the AI Journal and is not only just a contributor and founder to the AI Journal, but is an AI expert as well as a marketing guru, speaker, and he can do the rest himself. But before I pass it on over to him to do introductions, I want to just make sure that we welcome everyone who is joining us this morning. Be sure to let us know down below where you are calling in or where you're tuning in from. I'm here in Houston, Texas. Tom, where are you from?
Birmingham, UK, or just outside of Birmingham.
Yeah, so if it's 9 a.m. here in Houston, it is actually 3 p.m., correct? By you?
2 o'clock.
2 o'clock, sorry. Oh, I forgot. We haven't done the time change yet. We have time changed. You have not time changed.
Exactly. I think it's next week, week time.
Awesome. All right. So, Tom, maybe if you could kick us off with a better introduction. I know I did not do it any justice, but if you could take it from here.
No, I think you did a great justice to it. I'll take the recommendations from you. It was nice compliments. But yeah, like you're saying, Denise, we run the AI Journal. I really class myself as an AI enthusiast. I love everything that's going on at the moment. I don't know. I have a pulse on all the items, but it's really exciting to see how quickly this world's moving, and it's really exciting to keep people up to date on what's happening, where everything's moving, what kind of trends are, and really just have a more of a position than being, like what we always say, right or wrong, just being constantly curious to see how this will change everyone's life, from big businesses to not-for-profits to communities to public sector to the end user. So it's always really exciting to see the different conversations come up. And yeah, as you mentioned, my role is really to get curious about why people think the way they do about this kind of technology that's coming on the scene very, very quickly at the moment.
I love that. I talk about in sales. So for those of you that don't know, I have grown up as a salesperson, but spent the latter half of my sales career in AI, selling AI. And my differentiator in comparison to my competitors or other salespeople was that I actually learned the technology so that I could have credible conversations, which meant that I actually really understood what I was selling. And that really caused me to be an AI enthusiast, or fostered this AI enthusiasm. I love AI. So when I actually started Success with AI, my goal was to really educate people around the value and benefits of AI, but also talk about the negative implications, really just start to have the conversations. Now, what I realized was that evangelism for me didn't pay any money. So I created a sales program. So I merged the two together. And how do we humanize sales? And when I talk about selling, I talk about having to be curious, right? Continuously asking the questions, diving. Now, this is not a sales conversation, but I relate it back to sales and, quite frankly, anything else. We should always be curious, because AI is affecting us every single day. It is dynamically changing the world that we live in. And so I am so excited that you're here with us, Tom, because I think that we've got to have more conversations. Because when I talk to most people, what I hear them say, and you tell me if you disagree, and maybe this is a great conversation starter, but I feel like when I talk to most people, they think of AI as generative AI, and AI is so much more than that, right? It is so much more than we even really recognize or even understand, in my opinion, based on what I've learned about AI when I sold AI as a platform, right?
Yeah.
So
I
you tell
agree.
me what your thoughts are in relation to that and some of the conversations you're having.
Yeah, there's a lot happening, Denise. Like you said, it's really exciting, it's really interesting, really I guess at times tricky to understand what is happening and what's not happening. And just seeing all the moves that make that happening, like the past 2 weeks have been mad, and especially with GTC happening in a moment with Nvidia, to see all the releases they're coming out, and it although they shouldn't be seen as like they're probably the highest performing AI focused company I've seen, but it's really interesting, and people seem to forget that around generative AI, there's a whole world of other technology and other things that enable these conversations to happen, like the cloud or data centers, which is really more at the core of the cloud. When you define the cloud, it's like, what is the cloud? It's a weird way to explain data storage, but it's yeah, there's some brilliant conversations, and the main key thing I'm always excited about, similar to what you were mentioning, Denise, is that I'm really happy these conversations are happening between people trying to understand what it actually is, what does it mean for a business, what does it mean for their processes, and I wouldn't necessarily go into all those kind of typical wording that you use, like efficiencies and lower costs and all that kind of stuff, which just bores me to death personally. But really looking at it from what does it actually mean for the way you interact with things in your home, the way you interact with things on the street, the way you have conversations with your friends. And 15 years ago, then I was still a kid at that point, but to understand like how you're chatting and communicating. I see my nephews and nieces, and hear of my other friends' nephews and nieces, or family, or friends of family, or whatever, and it's just completely changed. Like the way they have the access and the power that is now in their hands at such a young age is incredible. And you think if they're growing up, I mean, the next technology that and I think I mentioned this with Steve is with Steve Suarez, is quantum computing. And people don't seem to be aware of how powerful that technology will be. I think generative AI and the large language models discussions. I mean, large language models are getting insane at the moment, like how accurate they're getting and how big they're getting and the conversations they can have. But really, when you switch the conversation, Denise, when it really will get exciting is when, instead of us prompting a chatbot like ChatGPT or Claude or whoever it is, what if it reverses and it starts prompting us? Those are where, which will happen. Like, it's not, I don't reckon it's far away. It's, it might already be happening. I don't know. But those are the kind of conversations where it's like, wow, this can really, really turbocharge things. And like the pace of innovation is mad. Like some of the things you're seeing, like Cisco buying Splunk. I reckon there'll be that was a massive acquisition, $28 billion, and I think it's all just gone through earlier this week. And what Nvidia's unveiling with its microchips and how to put that into robotics, what Tesla or what Elon hinted at, what they're releasing with cars that will have the same technology as SpaceX with inside it. Like I really think Mustafa moving to Mustafa Suleiman moving to Microsoft from taking a lot of his intelligence and a lot of his knowledge. There's so many things happening, and it's really interesting to see who are the leaders and who are getting ahead. Like Mistral, I really hadn't paid much attention to them, or really didn't know who they were. And you kind of look at other businesses like Apple and think, hey, Apple should be leading the race, but here they are at the moment. And there's a conversation where it seems, I don't know, I can only say what I've read and what I've heard. So whether that's true or false, I honestly do not know. But looking at them, apparently looking at external partners and potentially partnering with Google, because they can't keep up with the change quick enough. And you've got to think, where do businesses' specialities lie going forward? It's a really fascinating time. And to think, like, people seem to all eyes on generative AI, but then they forget about the hardware. And I think that's why Nvidia's latest announcements in GTC is exciting, because you see the hardware that powers a lot of this information we've got our hands on. So it's I don't know, I went off a bit of a rant there, Denise, but it's very exciting times, is what I'm trying to say.
It is. Well, maybe we can segue into then, or maybe expand the conversation as it relates to hardware, because when we I mean, most of us, and I say most of us, I'm generalizing. I know a little bit more only because of how much I really entrench myself in the AI space. But when I say most of us, I'm talking about the population at large. For the
Yeah.
most part, don't really understand the computing needs on the back end to support
Mm.
Chat GPT, Apple's new large language model that they're looking at releasing, right?
Yeah.
Meta's back end. No one really understands the needs or what is absolutely necessary in order to power those. So maybe we can talk a little bit more around that, because Nvidia is obviously launching GPUs or their newest version of GPUs, right, to support some of this power needed in order and back end in order to support these large language models.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's yeah, the computing power it takes. I think a lot of people miss these conversations about what it actually takes and what's actually going to be needed. And I think, um, I don't know, personally, I just get very bored of the conversations that happen around job losses and things because I just do not see it being true, and I do not see. I just don't see how it can be true. Like, there's so many opportunities, and there's so many new businesses, and so many new opportunities. Like, the time to market for a business today is incredible. Like, imagine if you did it 50 years ago, 30 years ago, 20 years ago. It was super hard to get a new business up and running, to build channels and distribution and engagement and audience. And I think it's like, if you look at, and where I'm going with this is, it's people don't really consider how a product's built or manufactured, or what the processes are behind it. I remember I used to work in manufacturing, or I worked in marketing. I wasn't an engineer or anything, but I would see the things that got built, Denise, and that's what really got me. That's when I just started AI Journal as a blog, and it really helped me understand, or probably part of the reason I started the blog, because I didn't understand what I was doing on a day-to-day basis, and here I was getting paid as a marketing executive. I thought, I don't actually know parts of what I'm doing in now, but it was it was a very interesting time. But it really made me think, like, even something simple as like a soap dispenser. So if you're washing your hands, and to just see like how that soap dispenser gets made, all the different parts that are needed to make it and manufacture it, that we don't give a second thought to, whether it's a table or a cup or a thing. And you think the process for technology is like 10 times harder, or in my opinion, not everything. And there's going to be things that, and it depends who you're asking. Some people just see it as a really, it's like if you ask someone who's really fit, um, how hard is it to get to the gym? They won't look at it as being hard. They'll just see it as a must, compared to someone who might be struggling and just starting that journey. They're going to see all the different processes to get there. Or it's like anything. Someone that hates traveling is going to see it as going to the airport, seeing as this, seeing as that. And I think the point I'm making is, people don't really understand the compute power that's needed to power these models, especially what the big businesses are doing with them.
Mhm.
Like, especially if I think the consulting groups are using them. I saw something about how they're integrating their own chat models. And you can think, if you've got a business of 300,000 employees, or like a big professional services unit, or one of the big four that have hundreds of thousand employees, if you're putting a model available to all of those people, to the compute power you're using, the energy, the costs, the things, and it's yeah, it's really fascinating to, and that's what I'm trying to focus on at the moment, like really trying to understand it at the more deep root level. And I think that's what I'm encouraging other people to do, to be like, look, it's not surprising if you put me in a, like, say this, Denise, if you put me in the pilot seat of an airplane and said you've got 200 people on board, fly the plane, I'd freak out. I'd be like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I don't know the ins and outs of it. You ask a
Right.
pilot to do it, they're going to see it as second nature. Like, click that button, hit that, we're up in the air, done. And I think that's the problem we're seeing with technology, that any kind of technology, not just generative AI or ChatGPT or large language models or Claude or whatever you want to look at. It's a much bigger discussion, and I think there's a lot of work to be done in that area, because you tell people, and they get worried, and it's, everyone gets scared of things you don't. Well, you might not get scared, maybe you get excited, but
Mm,
for sure you get worried.
I do think that people are a bit scared and worried because they're not knowledgeable enough. They're not
Mm,
entrenched enough in what's happening. And that's why I think we need to have more of these types of conversations so
yeah.
that people are more aware. If we fast forward to what life might look like with transhumanism and AGI. I mean, it can be a scary world if we aren't engaged and aware and knowledgeable of
Yeah.
those technologies, right? So how do we rein those back in? I don't think we can, right? I think it's already on that path, but we can most certainly, in my opinion, and you tell me if I'm wrong, in my opinion, if we start to have more people engaged and more people aware and knowledgeable, I think we can potentially affect or be agents of change in how AI is being developed or brought to us in this world, because we can say, hey, we don't want this, or
Yeah.
no, we need some parameters around this. We need ethical AI, we need responsible AI. And that's not, none of all of those things are not going to happen if we aren't engaging more and making ourselves aware and knowledgeable of the technologies, both as they are today and as they are going to look like in the future.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's are there any areas you've seen that are quite exciting at the moment to you, Denise? Like areas that you're seeing it get applied, or ways that, I don't know if that's asking the right question.
Yeah, yeah, no. So I would say, I got to go to CES this year,
Nice.
and there was a lot happening at CES. I'm obviously not at NVIDIA, which I can't imagine all
Mm,
the excitement and new technology that's being introduced there. But as it relates to what excites me is what we continue to see in the healthcare space, right? The fact that they've created the ability to manufacture organs that replicate your exact organ in your body,
yeah,
especially a heart, right? Enables you to go in as a doctor or a surgeon and start to work on that, because it reflects exactly what yours looks like, specific
yeah.
to you, and allows you to go in and practice when, in preparation for a
Very
surgery on your heart. I mean, I think that's pretty incredible. There are so many advances in healthcare in general. That's just
yeah,
one, right? But
yeah.
it's
What?
super cool.
Yeah, it's mad. It's in the Vision Pro was using its first surgery the other day. Was it last week? And that's mad that Apple have somehow found themselves in a operating theatre to assist the surgeon. Like I literally only saw it as a headline, so I don't know the ins and outs of the story. But it was yeah, just that idea to think how this technology is coming in. I mean, personally, wearables and everything, I think will be the headset. So like the next follow-on stage from mobile phones, and to consider all that sort of technology blows my mind. Like I've got pair of Google glasses somewhere, and it's really interesting to understand like how that all coincides with what our future looks like. Like imagine sales, like being in a sales room and being in a boardroom, and you got the glasses on, and all of a sudden you can just pull all the data on everyone that's around you, and you just know everything on them, like bang, 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 all your notes, all your collateral, and they have no idea, and you're just pulling it because you can see it like floating right next to their head. And I think people are missing these kind of um, opportunities, and if you've got smarter people, you're going to get smarter businesses, you're going to get smarter ways of thinking, and
Yep.
you're going to get more. Like I honestly think, and I got called a bit loopy for it, but I was like, the next big industry that's going to be created, it's clear to me, is going to be the space industry. Like the amount of commercialization that's happening for space at the moment, whether we go up and I don't know, inhabit a planet or whatever we do up there, there is a lot of money being thrown at that area, and I think it's just so exciting to think what does this actually mean for people that might not be that interested in technology. I speak to a few people and they're like, I literally don't care what happens with that kind of stuff. I just want a faster phone. And it's like you're like a perfect person. Like you literally just like they're embedded in something that it just doesn't really bother them. So it's interesting to see the different perceptions.
It is. You're not kidding. And when we talk about space, there's a guy that I'm connected with, Francois, and he talks about space. And I actually just commented on his post this morning that space to me, I get we've had men on the moon.
Yeah.
We've spent billions of dollars on technology for space. We have satellites that continuously orbit. I know that space is there and we've been in that realm for quite some time, but to
Mm,
think that what space could look like because we now have more and more technology, I mean, just it kind of seems crazy, like that's the future, but the reality is that there is no more future. We are living our future right now, right? I mean, I feel
absolutely.
like I feel like everything is at the tip of our fingers. You can touch
Exactly.
almost anything. And if it's already been thought of, it's already being developed behind the scenes. We just haven't seen
Yeah,
it yet.
exactly. Like that's such a good point, Denise. You think I wonder all the things that are getting developed that you just haven't heard about. Like we're developing things at the AI Journal, and I honestly reckon it will be a bit of a game changer for. And you think about where other places are developing things. And there's so many moves happening you just do not expect or do not see. That I'd read something. I think it was on Fortune the other day, yesterday, and it was basically saying like they analyzed like I think it was 2,000 startups or something, some massive number of like different startups, and I think it's even bigger than that. It might be 20,000, but it's basically analyzing all the numbers of startups and companies and what the high growth ones have, and it basically shows you them from incubator stage all the way to high growth, and it includes things like Airbnb and all these other ones that are in the list,
Mhm.
and basically shows that they reckon at the moment because of where we are with the economy and obviously prices hiking, like here in the UK, there's a big problem about how expensive things are becoming, especially with energy and food and all these different problems. While at the same time, we've got some of the biggest, most successful companies in the world reaping billions. And I don't know, my conversation isn't for or against, it's just observing what it is.
Right.
And I think it's, and it, where I was going with that is very interesting because they were explaining how it's looks like we're on the next innovation boom, like something we're getting very, very close to some sort of, I don't know, like next stage of innovation where you're just going to see a wave of businesses that are adopting this just really get ahead. And it's going to be, I don't know what the cycle was, but people were saying like how often the indexes like the S&P and the
Mhm.
NASDAQ and whatever else ones, like the ones across the world in different countries, but especially the S&P and the NASDAQ, and how many companies are still on those traded today from 50 years ago. It's not many, like out of the Fortune 500 that stay on those lists. And they said from what I read from the message, it's very exciting and it's very interesting to see what that next wave will bring, because there's companies that 5 years ago I'd never heard of, and now they're the ones with multi-billion-pound valuations. And it's just like I have not, I don't know, like I wasn't around 30, 40 years ago, but it's, I'd imagine it was quite hard to picture that a company could go from nothing to billions within several years. Like it's insane. Like it's mad that you can jump to those, regardless whether it's a
Mhm.
valuation or actual cash on hand. It's to still have those numbers against the company one way or another. It really paints a picture of just how incredible this technology is making on like an end user. Because even some companies I look at and I think I don't know. It's hard to understand what some of them do, Denise. Like it really is, because you
It
think,
is.
where is your actual customer and what do you actually do? And you say all these fancy words and you're using AI and you're using this, but show me the use case. And I think the next 2, 3 years, we're going to see a lot of case studies. This is exactly what we're doing. And I think that's what's going to set them apart, which is really exciting to see.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. There are a million different directions we could go with that.
Yeah,
With that,
sorry, but I just spiraled.
no, that's okay. That's okay. But maybe the way to maybe we can talk about what I think. So if I were to think about reflect on what you just said, there are what I find super frustrating is you have these organizations who want to adopt AI, but
Mm.
instead of actually creating a use case that is actually usable or that
Yeah.
really adds to the bottom line, they're just adopting AI so they can say that they are using AI.
Yeah.
And that is not going to be what enables an organization to continue to grow. It is
Mm.
going to be adopting AI for specific use cases that add to the bottom line. And I know you hate to use the term creating efficiencies or a
Mm.
phrase creating efficiencies, but if you think about when you adopt AI, you should be using it for two reasons. One is you should be using it so it can give you the efficiencies that I know you hate using so that you can pivot and actually work on focus on higher value activities, start to innovate, utilize your creativity. And then the other thing is it's going to actually be leveraged to create new products and service offerings. I mean,
Mm.
so you've got AI that should help you so that you can focus on more creative, higher value, offering new products and service offerings, adding to the bottom line revenue stream,
Mm.
or you should be using it to create new product or service offerings that are actually going to add value that people are going to want to buy. But just to pick up and leverage so that you can say you're using AI without a specific use case is, to me, just irresponsible. Maybe that's a great way to describe it.
Yeah.
Irresponsible.
I think that's a great way of describing it, Denise. It's not I hate the word either. I just hate it if you used like if you use it's like if someone tells me my product sucks or business sucks, I'm like, okay, like it's not very helpful. Like, can you tell me why? And it's like, obviously I'm just going to ignore that comment because it's like, well, I've got no problem hearing that harsh feedback, but I think it's the same thing with efficiency. It's like, oh yeah, it's increased efficiency, and then you probe them how. Well, we've used it. It's like, give me the use case. Like, tell me how you've done it. Like, even if it's behind closed doors, I think it just makes me very cautious. It's like, do you even know
Yep.
what you're using? Are you using off the shelf? Are you using are you using a wrapper around ChatGPT and then claiming it's some sort of exceptional piece? Like, you can use it from anything from content creation to, if you're a logistics company, to understanding throughput on your production line. If you're a manufacturing company or in healthcare, you can use it for testing different DNA sequences to understand if it can create a vaccine or create to stop a disease progressing further. Or if you're in travel, you can use it to predict prices of a aeroplane flight, so you can get it at the right time and you can get the best price option. Like, all these different, like, God knows how many different ways you can use it. And those are just ones that came to mind straight away. But it's to your point, it is really frustrating to just not understand how businesses are using it and why you're using AI, and if you even need to use it at the moment. Like, it's like a lot of the press releases I read, Denise, I struggle to understand them because I just think you're using so many big words. I don't think you understand yourself. Like, I really do. Like, do you understand what you're doing? Like, and I find and I'm very public about that. It's a very big problem I have with PR companies and communication companies. And not to switch the conversation to hate on them, because I don't hate on them. It's just a problem they've got to overcome. It's it's a real challenge, because that's why people are confused, I think. Whereas
Yep.
if you've really got a solution, AI solution, you're probably not going to talk about it in that way. You're probably going to say, and like, look at Klarna. Klarna were a big one, and I reckon part of the reason, this is my personal opinion, some people might think it's stupid, and I'd love to be challenged on it, but the idea that they got so much I don't know, critique, negative and positive, is because they plainly stated what they'd done with it. It's like, yeah, we've replaced the work of 700 agents or 700 customer support units. That, to me, you don't need to tell me that increases efficiency. I know, I can pick two and two together and think your profit is going to be much higher, your business processes are going to be higher, you're not going to need to put as much on headcount, your fixed costs are going to be lower because you haven't got to hire all those 700 agents. And I don't even know if they're getting rid of, like, I don't know the ins and outs of what they're doing behind the scenes, but I thought that was a bit bizarre. That or not bizarre. I thought that was a brilliant example, whether you love it or hate it, of how a big company is using it for real gains rather than just saying we're using it for efficiencies. And I think that communication, I reckon the ones that are super clear, like, here's the use case, weaving, and you do see it with companies. Not all companies are like this, and not all vendors, and not all software solutions or business services, however you want to, consultants, however you want to brand, or whatever unit it's in that sells technology as part of its offering, either through a distributor or in-house. And I think it's that's what's going to get companies ahead. And then, personally, I could be very wrong, of course, but
No, I agree with you.
but I think it's, to me, if I'm buying something, I'm like, tell me exactly, like, when people pitch us software, that we have to use software because we can't develop it in house. I don't have the expertise, and it's the classic conversation. If I'm going to go buy something, I can just buy it today, or I could take that chance of spending 10 years to try and build it myself and then play catch up. It's just daft.
Right.
Like, of course I'm going to go buy the technology from someone, whether that's a CRM from Salesforce, or whether it's legal support, or whether it's whatever it might be. And it's simply, I ask, tell me exactly how that's going to help a media company, or what problem are you solving for us? And it's very interesting to see some companies' answers, because it makes me think, do you even know what you're selling? Or do you, like, how much training have you had on it to understand? And I see it, I don't really see it, unfortunately, for me, unfortunately, with companies selling to other companies, because people like to have those very locked off, and it's very hard to get into those conversations or understand it. But it's, yeah, I feel like the communication part is a massive thing, Denise. Like you're saying, it's to me it is, because that's the whole reason I do what I'm doing. I think people are so annoying. They're like bankers trying to hide the information or hide it in jargon. And I just tell me. And the best way to get around that is saying, show me, because if they can't show you on a workflow or a process, or like, this is where we get your data from, this is our solution, and this is how we spit things out. And the ones that show things, in my opinion, they're the ones I like to look at, because I think I can actually understand what you're doing very, very simply. Like, it's very easy. Like simplicity, the whole reason Apple's such a great product. They keep everything super simple.
Yep. Keep it super simple. Yes. Well, when I think about, like, for example, I mean, you touched on it as it relates to sales. When I think about sales, I talk about creating efficiencies within the sales process, because I do believe there are 4 use cases. Well, there are 4 areas, and there are probably multiple use cases, but I think there are 4 areas in which you should leverage AI. So okay, so let's define or qualify. AI also includes, because that's the umbrella, it includes automation, right? So there are automation solutions out there that you can leverage. But I mean, because you could purchase for every part of the sales process, you could figure out a AI or automation solution that you could leverage. But quite honestly, that just creates noise and confusion for the sales reps, which there in turn creates noise and confusion for the buyers, right? So when I talk about it, I say, okay, you need it for lead nurturing, client nurturing, forecasting, and for customer insights. And I can give you use cases in each of those. Those are the types of, narrowing it down to exactly what is going to move the needle with other organizations, with individuals. That's where you've got to really hone in and focus, instead of creating all this, as you call it, noise. But I want to go back to part of the reason that people are fearful is because of this job loss, right? And you've mentioned it once already, that you think it's, not true necessarily that we will see job loss. And then we have this example of this, I think you said Japanese or Chinese organization that got rid of a bunch of customer support service people, right? And they've created
Klarna. Are they Swedish? Klarna, do you have Klarna in America? You must have Klarna in America. So you can,
I don't know of Klarna, no.
No, it's like pay in 30 days solution.
Oh, Klarna, yes. Klarna. Yes. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, but see, I think that's where people get fearful. But I don't know about you, but what I've been messaging, and I think I hear it based on just the way you've responded or conversed about it here, is the way I feel is, yes, it is going to replace some of our job skills.
Yeah.
And it should, because quite honestly, I think that a lot of us get paid a lot of money to do these everyday mundane tasks that could be automated, right?
Yeah.
I think there is a lot to be said for getting rid of the non-challenging, non-exciting, mundane tasks that a robot or a machine could take, or a software could take over. So yes, it is going to replace some of our job skills, but that gives us an opportunity as individuals and as companies to help each other upskill, so that we can focus on more challenging, more exciting activities that are actually going to move the needle within an organization. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, 100%. It's a really interesting point you're making, Denise. Like how to get the right people doing the right. It's a hard point though, because it's not like a one set answer, and I feel like people want to have an answer to something that and how to get the education right, or what you need to do. And I think that's where you're going with this, is like what the skill sets are. I still don't think people know. Like, we're putting a white paper together at the moment, like the role of a chief AI officer. And it's really interesting to see, like, we're running polls and running things, and certain people think it's just not needed. And like they say, again, it's confusing. They're like, why do I need another job title? Like, just leave it as chief the CTO, like a CTO can incorporate all those things. And other people are very bullish on it. I mean, like, I think it's like 68% are planning to hire a CAIO in the next 12 months. I think I've got that right from the data we've got. And it's, it's really interesting just to see how people are perceiving it, what they want to do with AI in their organization, what does it mean, and what's the kind of real benefit. But past that, like what's the real value to like the end user and to like the end actual person using it on day-to-day workflow? Like if you use a business like ServiceNow or like ticketing solutions, or if you use a business like Splunk, or use like a mobile reception like EE or something, you know what they do. And I feel there's a big education piece there on what you can actually sell and how to sell it and how to package it. And I think that's going to probably be the biggest challenge people come across, because they don't maybe fully know themselves. And I also get really annoyed that people want to, or that these big groups like Gartner and Forrester and IDC, they're just so focused on predicting the future instead of saying what's actually happening right now. And I think that's where someone like CB Insights is brilliant, because they look at things, what is happening right now. And I'm not saying the others don't do that, but they definitely seem more obsessed with the future, which I think is a losing game, because everything's just moving so quick and a lot of their predictions are always wrong. And I think that doesn't really, I don't know if I'm going down the right line of conversation, but it's something in my head I want to think about, because it's thinking, like, to your point, how does that help people make a decision on how they should be using it, and does it actually confuse them, and it makes them think, I need to rush to do this, I need to rush to do that because so and so said it's going to be this, when reality it's probably not that. Like, we don't really use AI in we use AI in our business for content creation and for image generation and very low things, and we use dynamics, and it will definitely get used in there to like recommend things, and obviously ChatGPT is included through Copilot. But I think there's really, I struggle to find the actual conversations where people are showing how you can use it in and out of your business. Whereas there's other technologies, there's God knows how many free courses on YouTube to use it. I'm not finding too much on AI at the moment.
Well, so that begs the question then, when when we're thinking about AI, how do we sift through that noise, right? How do we make sense of some of this confusion so that it is not so confusing to us? What would you recommend right now? How do we manage through all of this?
Well, that's a good question. So, I don't know if I'm the best person. I'll give you my answer, or maybe I'd be curious to see what other people think and what you think, Denise. But I mean, it really starts for me. Well, what I suggest to people is, like, look, you don't need to get concerned with the ins and outs, and really focus on, like anything. People are very selfish, I guess. And I don't know if I'm saying this right, but I'm trying to process in my head. Like, what do you want it to do for you, and what do you want? And I think that's where companies like Salesforce are brilliant at selling that product, because they really put a lot of focus on, like, what do you want it to do? What do you want our platform to do for you?
What do you want the outcome to be?
Exactly. What do you want the outcome
Yes.
to be? And like, if you go to like a Tony Robbins seminar, which I'm really fond of, they're like, what's your outcome? Like, what do you actually want to achieve? And I always talk about it in businesses. The businesses that are always focused on that, or maybe think like their customer, they do a lot better. Like, how many times, and I might be going slightly off course, and I'll give a recommendation. How many times, Denise, have you got a cold email and you think, well, I would never subscribe to that business or never take interest? And I think, if I'm wording this correctly, how about I get your email and I copy it word for word and send it to your CEO and see what he thinks to it? Because he's probably going to think this is a load of rubbish. Like, what are they sending me? And I think that same issue, like, I guess where I'm going is, don't do things just because you think it's the right thing to do. And I don't think, everything's very affordable. I think people need to just go and do their own research, Denise. Like, I really do. And people don't seem to want to do it. It's like, you look at successful people, a very successful trend. That's why I asked you about books before we jumped on here. Seem to read books because they know they can go learn the traits from other successful people. Or like, you might read fiction to expand your creativity or to blow your mind. And the amount of people I meet that just don't want to go do that. And I'm like, why don't you go read up on it? And they're like, I just want to be told about it. It's like, explaining a technology this bloody hard in 30 minutes for a FaceTime call or whatever. It's impossible. Like it's such a big topic. You need to
Yeah.
be reading it an hour every single day and schedule that time. And I think that's where the bigger companies get ahead, because they realize it. They either build in a program where every, I don't know, what is it, like they schedule in, like you can have a free day, you can put a day a month towards education and reading whatever content you want. People will give book allowances, or there's very rare successful people, and maybe not books, but seminars or understanding. I'm not preaching personal development. I'm just preaching, go,
Education.
the stuff is there. Like
Yes.
and there's books I read, and I think I honestly do not know what I'm reading here, and that will lead me down a rabbit hole, because I'll think either I'm going to finish the book and make notes and realize I don't understand much of this book, and I'll probably come back to it in 6 months, or I'll read it again in a year. But I know exactly. I don't know, by reading things, even if you don't understand it, you're probably going to start picking up things when you read the next book, or read the next listen to the next podcast, or do the thing. But it's amazing, like the ignorance of people that, and I'm guilty of it as well, because you've only got so many hours a day, and there's things. That's how businesses support.
70 hours a day?
You've only got so many hours a day. Imagine.
Oh, I thought you said 70. I was like, where are you? What kind of day do you live in?
Yeah, imagine.
Well,
What a different planet.
and even if it's not books, right? There are so
Yeah.
many mediums out there, like your AI journal. There are live streams like this. There are webinars. There are news stream or news articles that you see on our news feeds, whether that's on Facebook or TikTok or LinkedIn. There are so many mediums for us to consume information. I think the most frustrating, and I'll liken it to this. It's probably a bad example, but it shows the world that we live in these days. When the Ukraine war broke out, or excuse me, not the Ukraine war, the Israeli war. When that war broke out, all of these messages that I saw on Facebook, or these posts that I saw on Facebook, which was, this is the history behind Jerusalem, right? And it was, I don't even remember that whole, but to me that was super interesting that people were just copying and pasting that. And
Yeah.
it was already forming an opinion as to what side they were on in that war, based on all these things they copied and pasted. So
Yeah.
instead of actually understanding what
Yeah.
was truly going on and really researching, they were already forming opinions and copying and pasting someone else's post, rather than making the opinion based on their own knowledge, right? They
Yeah.
didn't take the time. And I think that that's part of the problem that we see in this world today, even as it relates to AI. We have all this information, but instead of actually doing our homework, we're listening to bits and pieces of it without doing any homework. And so we consume or take on someone else's opinion, someone else's perspective, someone else's viewpoint, because we haven't done the work ourselves. But that is because we don't want to take the time. But the reality is, there's so many different ways for us to consume new data. If we just pick the way that functions best for us and dive into it, spend even 30 minutes a day. It doesn't have to be 30 minutes at one time, 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, 6 minutes there. It doesn't really matter, but spend some time in these different mediums trying to consume more data so that you truly learn and make yourself aware of what's transpiring out there in this world today.
It's so true. People don't want to. I think that's the biggest problem we've got, Denise. I really do. I think it's people. It's like if you sit all day on your emails, you're not going to get anything done in your business. Like, people ask us how we move so quickly. It's because I might let some people down by not responding quick enough on emails. But I just think I wouldn't be having this conversation with you via email if I didn't work so bloody hard around the other aspects of the business. And I think that's a big productivity problem. Like it points to it time and time again. If you're on an email, you're literally just responding to other people's problems or other people's needs. Normally, not all the time, but I'd say probably about 80-20%.
Yeah.
And obviously, that's how you communicate new business and new partnerships, all these things that definitely help build the business. I'm not discounting those, but it's where I'm going with that is, it's a really simple answer. Like, that's the reason I did not know anything about this world up until about 2019, 2020, around that time. Like, I didn't. Like, I was from a marketing background, and I worked in marketing companies. I worked in the PR world, and I guess I had a sense of it and an idea. And as soon as I moved to that engineering role, which I'm grateful for, was where everything changed. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. And I knew I was in a world where I didn't understand it, and I was sitting in meetings, and I was sat there, Denise, thinking I have zero idea what these guys are talking about, and I have zero idea what that customer is coming in to talk to us about, and I've now got to sit on it and film how this throughput works at a Hermes Depot hub to create a case study on how they're using predictive analytics and machine vision. It was bizarre. Like, so I had to read up very quickly because otherwise I knew I'd probably be fired. But it was, and people don't seem to want to do that. Well, a lot of people do. Like, I'm discrediting people, but like people calling them experts overnight. And to your point about what's happening on global affairs and with the unfortunate wars and everything, which is really sad to see, it's people form opinions very quickly, and I think it's really important. Like, to just like you're suggesting, and like the great way that you're looking at it, Denise, is to be more like a scientist, and just like the way that they look at it fascinates me, because they might have opinion, and I'm not speaking for all scientists, I'm speaking for the few that I've met and the way that they're talked about in books and they're referenced. It's they're just very curious, and it's just thinking like, how do you know what's right? Like, what does define right or wrong? And someone said to me like, oh, well, that's a made up word, and I was like, well, every word's a made up word. And it takes us back to this idea of like how, and I guess I'm going a bit deep rabbit hole with this, but like how does it all make sense, or how do you make sense of it? And I think the only way you can make sense of it is really doing your research. And I think if a lot of companies follow that method of like, what outcome do I want, right, not just for yourself but for a customer as well. And I credit Salesforce again, because they talk about this so much. Like, get yourself out of your own shoes, and if you were the customer approaching them, how can you help them? Like, do you even need to help them? Like, is there any way you can add value? And Jeff Bezos talks about it in Invent and Wonder, which is written by Walter Isaacson, but it's like a writings of all his what do you call them, shareholder letters since they've gone public. And it's really interesting. And one of them, I think it's like 2016 or 2017, 2018, and he talks about the difference between mercenaries and missionaries. And we'll always, and I don't mean to go off the conversation of AI, but it's very true to the AI world today, Denise. Like, that there's a lot of companies that are building things to be a mercenary compared to being a missionary, where AI is just a enabler, or it's just a engine, or it's just a product or a vehicle to get to what they're really solving, which is, if you're using it in flight travel, it's so your customer can have a better holiday at a cheaper price and still have the 5-star lavish lifestyle. Or if it's in medicine, so the drug you're supplying to combat a certain infection or disease doesn't have to be paid for, or doesn't have a massive monthly subscription cost. Or whether it's in engineering, so you can produce more Coca-Cola bottles at scale, or produce cars quicker.
Yeah.
And I think that's where people are missing this message. I don't know. Does that make sense? Like, where the
It
actual
does. If I were, because I want to be respectful of your time and everyone else's time, but if I were to summarize really this entire conversation that we've had, it has been really centered around just being more curious, make yourself aware, and leverage AI so it's actually making a difference in your business, right? So instead of just adopting AI just to say that you're cool and you're using AI, is really not going to add to your bottom line. Really figure out what your use cases are. What is the outcome that you want to achieve? And then work backwards from there and decide where within that outcome can you leverage AI to help you move the process along further and faster, or enhance what you're offering at the end of the outcome. How can you leverage AI so that you're getting to your outcome in a way that's meaningful to the bottom line revenue stream, is what I take away from this entire. And in order to do that is you have to educate yourself. You have to become more aware and not just take all of these new technologies for face value, but actually understand and study them. And you don't have to do it just by reading a book. It can be from any medium that you prefer, that is more convenient, or in which you learn better from. Just get out there and learn.
Exactly. Get out there and learn. It's great. I mean, that's what I'm doing. And it seems to be working. So this.
Well, and you have the AI journal that enables us to do that, right? So how can we get engaged with you? How do we get to know you a bit more? Where do we find you?
Follow the AI journal on LinkedIn. That's where I always am. I'm not always, but we're there a lot, and I'll see your comments and messages, or connect with me on LinkedIn. And yeah, or check out the website and give us all your feedback. We love to see it. But yeah, smart search function coming soon to the AI Journal. I'm really excited.
Awesome.
We,
And
yeah.
And you should go make sure you're following Tom. And he had a poll that I actually participated on regarding the CAIO. I'd love to, at some point, we maybe need to further this conversation, because I'd love to hear some feedback on that and what you feel about that. You told us that, what the percentages of those that voted were, but we
Yeah.
didn't get to really hear a lot of yours. There was so much that we could have unpacked in this conversation. So I guess where I'm going with that all is, this is not a conversation that I'd like to see end. I would love to see us have another follow-on conversation at some point so we can dive into some of the other things that we didn't get to cover. I want to thank you for joining us. Thank those that have been with us as well. I think this has been an amazing conversation. We've had some great takeaways, which I'll just reiterate those again, which is really just go get out there, be curious, and learn in whatever way you do best. Learn more about AI and how to use it, and use it so that you're actually leveraging it for use cases that can add to your bottom line. So I think, thank you very much for being here. Tom, you want to leave us with any parting words?
Thanks for having me. It's been fun. I mean, it's always good to speak to new people. I'm always up for it. Always up for the conversations with whoever. And like you said, keep staying curious and wondering. Question. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Question.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. See you again next week at Caff-AI Chats. And I appreciate everyone being here. I have an opportunity to be on the Cold Calling podcast at noon Central Time, so you can join us there, where we're talking about sales. This morning was AI, and today will be about sales. So thank you, everyone.
Love it. Thank you.
Hold on, I'll end the stream now for those that are still hanging on.